Survival. It is the main motivation for most things that most creatures do. Survival for the individual and for the species as a whole. I want to talk about survival in the context of creating new species for fantasy or sci-fi. Because it's easy to create a creature that looks really cool, has really cool abilities, but would logically, realistically, not be able to survive where they live the way they live. Realism is obviously not really the thing that you're after in fantasy and sci-fi, but I still like to consider it at least a little bit. So let's talk about it. What kind of defenses does this species have against predators and against nature? Defenses on an individual level or as a species? Let's start with how they might defend themselves against predators. How do they make sure that they are not killed by other animals? Do they have camouflage? Maybe hard shells? Are they poisonous? Do they play dead? Do they have some sort of venom? Can they hypnotize other creatures to not kill them? Do they have a symbiotic relationship with a different creature that helps them survive in exchange for something? Basically, are they strong, fast, big, small, smart, good at hiding, or maybe something else? And remember that symbiotic relationship that I mentioned. First of all, it could of course be parasitical instead. Secondly, it could be with humans or with some other sapient creature. There are plenty of examples of animals in our world that have no chance of surviving in the wild anymore because they have evolved or been bred to be domesticated. So what this other species might get back from this protection is not necessarily food or care or anything else really useful. We keep pets because they're cute and because we have some sort of emotional connection to them. I mean, originally pets were useful to us. They were beasts of burden, or they were a way to keep the rodent population down. And that is still the reason why many people keep animals around, but a creature that has at some point evolved to be just a pet is also perfectly reasonable. But other animals are not the only danger out there. Nature itself is also very dangerous, so how does your creature survive? Maybe especially if they live in a harsh environment, but even otherwise, what are their defenses against nature? How do they survive the heat, or the cold, or fire, drought, hurricanes, heavy rain, earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, floods, and all of the other things that nature throws our way? Some fun ways to think about this includes being able to hibernate for a long stretch of time, either months or years, maybe decades or even centuries if the consequences of a disaster stays for that long. It could also be adapting very quickly. Either an individual can adapt within minutes or hours to certain conditions, or the species can adapt over the course of 1 or 2 generations, depending on what kind of adaptation is necessary. So, say your creature lives in an area where wildfires are extremely common. What are some fun ways that they could have adapted in order to survive that? They might have the ability to construct some sort of fireproof shell in order to be able to survive in the heart of the fire. Or maybe they excrete some fireproof liquid or goo or something to line their nests with. Maybe if they have the ability to sense a fire coming beforehand, they will spread this fireproofing over a larger area, not just their nests, in order to protect not just themselves, but also their territory and their food sources. If that's a thing, I imagine that could act as a warning to other creatures around them that, oh, a fire is coming because these creatures are behaving in this way. Another thing could be burrowing far into the ground where the fire can't get to you and be able to survive there until the fire stops, or maybe even until the vegetation and everything else has recovered so that they have some food when they get up there again. So far, I have mostly talked about individuals and how an individual might survive a certain condition, but it's also entirely possible that the species doesn't have a defense on an individual level, but rather as a whole, as the entire species. That can be things like reproducing very quickly or having lots of offspring at once to maximize the chance that enough of them will survive. It can also be that fertilized eggs perhaps can survive in very, very harsh conditions until it is safe for them to hatch, which goes back to something I talked about in a previous video about a species that everyone believes is extinct, but it's just that the next generation hasn't hatched yet, either because that's just a natural cycle, or in a case like this, because the conditions haven't been quite right yet. Again, all of these are little details that you don't have to explore in depth. You don't have to explore every single one of them, but they are just excellent angles to take in order to make your fantasy creatures more unique. Now, survival is one thing, but what do you do with the life that you have? You're born, you survive, then what? Next time, we're talking about social structures like families or other groups, territories, and things like that. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss that. Hit the bell so you're the first to see it. Thank you for watching. Be safe. I will see you next time.